gonna make hummus tonight. So when you open your can of chickpeas, you're gonna want to drain out the aquafaba, which is the water in a can of chickpeas, and you're gonna use that as to help mix up the chickpeas. Because I use aquafaba as an oil replacer in a lot of other recipes, and so you can use it instead of olive oil in your recipe. So hummus is traditionally a Middle Eastern recipe that uses chickpeas and garlic, lemon juice, tahini, and salt. However, as more Western countries are using hummus more, we've figured out how to make it from all kinds of beans. So we have recipes that use chickpeas, but also red lentils, white beans, and then even one that uses a can of chickpeas, a can of white beans, and sweet potatoes, which is my favorite. So we're going to start by making the red lentil hummus. If you look at the recipe, you'll see that it calls for 1 cup of red lentils and then 2.5 cups of water, and you bring that to a simmer and let it cook for 15 to 20 minutes until all the liquid is absorbed. You could use it right then to make hummus. It won't be as thick. It'll just get thicker when you put it in the refrigerator. So I just pre-made this so that we wouldn't have to wait while I made it tonight. So we're going to just start with it pre-made and cooled. So another tip is to, when you're going to put the garlic in the food processor, is to add the garlic first. It calls for 2 garlic cloves, and so we're going to put those in. And when you put them in first, you'll see it just kind of makes them so they all just turn into little tiny pieces. See that? If there was anything else in there, it wouldn't do that. So you've got to put the garlic in first, otherwise you might end up with bigger chunks, and not everybody likes a big chunk of garlic in their hummus, right? Okay, so then we're going to add the red lentils. So then we've got 2 tablespoons of tahini. The cheapest place I've found to get tahini in this valley is actually Natural Grocers. Not always the cheapest place for other things that are that we like to eat in the plant-based world, but for tahini, totally is the best price. So,
can I see the jar?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I've bought that brand of other things.
Yeah. When I bought this, I found it at Ridley's a few times, and it was like $10, $11 for 8 ounces. Mm-hmm. And I think this was like $7 for 16 ounces. It's like, that's a significant difference, right? All right, 2 tablespoons of tahini and then 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And a teaspoon of salt. And a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Okay, that's it. Just going to mix that up now. One of my other tips is that if you really want a smooth hummus, to really be patient with letting it mix. Like one of the recipes said, I like to let this mix for 5 minutes. So if that gives you some perspective on how long it might take, the chickpeas especially can take longer to get really smooth. These look like they're not going to take nearly that long. But if they're not getting smooth, just let it keep running, okay?
Pumpkin pie? Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so you start with a can of chickpeas. I actually prefer, I don't actually love the taste of chickpeas, so I actually love chickpeas a lot more when I make them myself. I don't know why in a can they have a stronger flavor, but when I have bought, just buy chickpeas and soak them or just cook them in the Instant Pot,
You like the taste of
I
it?
like the taste a lot better because it has less of a taste. So for me, so I don't know if that's true for everybody, but okay. So then I'm using a can of just, it's just pure pumpkin puree, and it calls for 1.25 cups.
Yourself, then you just save the water?
Yeah. Yep.
How long do they take in your Instant Pot to cook?
So I usually soak them first, and then they take about 10 minutes. At pressure.
Right. Really?
And how long do you soak it?
Overnight.
Okay.
Chickpeas are actually one that don't technically need, they cook a lot faster than other beans would if you don't soak them first. So they might not take, actually no. I think one time I didn't soak them and they took like an hour.
Okay.
That's not
I
too
kept
bad,
having to
though.
add more time. I was like, seriously.
But only 10 minutes if you soak them?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, 1/4 cup of tahini. Now the tahini in this actually helps it make it so that you can't taste the chickpeas. Tahini is just ground up sesame seeds. So it's actually a nut butter, seed butter. Sometimes they toast the sesame seeds first, but so it is kind of a calorically dense food. It's not something you want to be eating a lot of, but so some people leave it out of hummus because they avoid those, but it gives a nice flavor. And 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. This is one that I found a recipe online for a vegan pumpkin pie recipe that they were like, really recommend you mix your own spice. So that's what I had left over from last year because I liked it so much. I made it like 2 or 3 times. It's so good. Teaspoon of vanilla, and then it says salt to taste. I don't think I added any salt. Feel free to add some if you feel like you need some, but I'm not sure if it needs some. Okay, so you're really just measuring all those in, and then we're gonna turn it on. Sometimes it requires scraping down a few times, but okay. We have achieved smoothness. All right, so we start with a can of chickpeas. We're gonna add, I'm using almond butter. You can use peanut butter. They're both good. I've tried them both. And then we're going to use 1/4 cup of maple syrup. And then 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. A teaspoon of vanilla. 2 2 tablespoons of water. Now it says a pinch of salt, but I think that my almond butter is salted. So if you use salted peanut butter, you don't need salt. Just a hint there. Okay. You ready for the magic? This one, the cocoa kind of gets powder everywhere, so you have to mix it a few times. Sometimes I found that the liquid kind of gets stuck under the blade at the bottom. I don't know why, but I kind of have to mix it a little bit more. You just have to be more careful about making sure that some of that gets out. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I just want to go over some of these recipes really quick. Some of the ingredients that you might not be as familiar with. So the smoked red pepper barbecue hummus. It calls for chipotles in adobo sauce. Usually you find those in the Mexican or Hispanic aisle. And they are, like this recipe calls for 2 chipotle peppers. But when I opened up the can, there was a whole bunch of little pieces on the top. And I was like, how do I find just 2? So if you like dump it into a bowl, then you can go, oh, there's a pepper and there's a pepper. Does that make sense? If you just open up the top, it might be just little pieces on the top. But there was probably enough for at least 4 or 5 batches in there. So you could put them in groups of 2 and freeze them that way. And then you could pull them out and make it easier to use. The sweet potato, spiced sweet potato hummus, I really liked it because I often will make roast a whole bunch of sweet potatoes at a time in the oven, and then I just like to have them in the fridge for when I want something that's sweet, but I know is going to be good for me and not just a treat. So I just had some in the fridge that I was able to just pull out and just measure out how much I needed for the recipe. So that's nice when you can just use something that you've already got in the fridge. The roasted white garlic white bean hummus. All of the other times I've heard people tell you how to roast garlic, they always say that you have to take the garlic clove and cut the top off and pour olive oil over the top, and then you wrap it in aluminum foil. But I was like, there's got to be a way to do it without oil, right? So I looked it up, and someone was like, yeah, you just wrap it in aluminum foil, stick it in the oven. I was like, oh, okay. So I did it with a few. Have you guys roasted garlic before? So when you pull it out of the oven, they've still got all the skins on them. And so then you just kind of pull it open and then squeeze them out, and the garlic is roasted inside. So then it's nice and soft, and it's got a nice roasted flavor to it. The other thing that I learned doing this was I was like, I actually buy garlic pre-peeled because I use enough garlic. I don't like trying to get out of the peel. So the other thing I thought was, can you just roast garlic just already peeled? And I found someone that said, yeah, you just take the garlic that's already pre-peeled and stick a bunch of it in foil and stick it in the oven. And that worked really well too. Costs a little more up front. The whole head of garlic was 59 cents, Yeah. And, but it's totally worth it for me to buy pre-peeled garlic. I don't like peeling garlic. It's a headache. So anyway, so that's how you roast garlic. And you might find other things that it's just really yummy in. You start roasting garlic. What'd you guys think?
Delicious. Yeah.